Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from Sort of Interesting, and as much as I love being here at beautiful Blakemere, we need to get back to the boat because I've got a ton of jobs that need doing. Hang on a minute, we're already there. Sorry my friends about that, but I do absolutely love mooring up here with that extraordinary view through the windows. Anyway, seriously, we've got work to do. Right then my friends, our first job is replacing this broken inverter, which fundamentally takes power from the batteries which are charged by the engine and then turns it into usable power for phones and laptops and gizmos and general items on board. So as this is the third time that I've replaced an inverter on board, you would think it would go smoothly. Let's have a look what happened. But first, because this is broken, we have a saying on the canal, and that is that if you don't need it, chuck it overboard. Obviously that wasn't really the canal. So my friends, here we can see a broken inverter in the little thin cupboard on the wall, but before we go any further we're going to switch the power off so that there's no battery power coming into the boat whatsoever, and it's just a simple case of flipping that switch. And then you would think it's a simple case of taking the wires off the old inverter and attaching them to this giant new inverter. Of course, that didn't quite work out as planned, as unbelievably, the holes in the wires were too small to fit on the pins on the new inverter. But luckily, having a landscape gardener in the family, I had access to some sort of chainsaw sharpening or chainsaw filing kit here, and used the circular files to file out the holes and widen out the holes on the battery cables. And then, as if by magic, we were live. Sorry about that dramatic pause, I didn't quite time that voiceover well there. And then the real moment of truth, of course, was plugging the lights in and seeing if they'd actually switch on. Now, as you'll see, obviously, luckily they did. My wonky lights there that have fallen off the wall. But the reason that my previous inverters kept blowing is that they weren't powerful enough to handle what I was using, like my laptop and fridge and lighting and things like that. However, because of having such a small space in the cupboard for an inverter, I didn't want to get something more powerful like this, which is twice as powerful as the previous inverter, but obviously hugely large footprint to fit in somewhere. There's one issue with this inverter, and that's the fact that it's so huge compared to the previous inverters here. It doesn't actually fit in the cupboard and sticks out ahead of where the board would normally go. So what I think I'm going to have to do, because this is obviously getting close to the oven top, is get a sheet of metal, just a short sheet of metal that fits to the top of the cupboard downwards and maybe comes out a few inches. So then this can go up against that, so it's got a protected metal non-wooden side next to the oven, and obviously there's more breathing space around the inverter. That is, however, likely, it's not likely, it's going to mean that the towel rack has to come off, so I'll figure it all out as I go. Okay, so this one's going to be a really quick, simple job. So some of you may have known it from a recent video. I was unsure how much diesel I had in my tank and a little bit concerned as I'd broken my previous dipstick, but luckily managed to find this, which is the bottom bar from a blind in my granddad's garage, which, as you can see there from the wet line, you can see how much diesel's actually in the tank. So it's more than I'd expected in there, but I still thought, you know what, while we're in the area, let's wheel it into the front of the marina at Ellesmere and moor up here, as you can see, next to a pretty simple pump, similar to what you'd find in a petrol station, and fill it up with another 50 litres or so. Next job, my friends, refilling the waterproof grease in the stern gland. So, if we pan the camera down first of all and just appreciate this engine, Beta 35 for anyone who's curious. Still hasn't done even 200 hours of runtime yet. Lovely. That's my knee that you see in there, sorry. As you can see, I'm sort of all packed in here at weird angles to try and film. So, that brass tube then, it needs to be unscrewed so I can refill it with waterproof grease. The handle is screwed practically down to the bottom there at the top of the tube. So that basically means it's almost empty. And as you turn that handle, it forces waterproof grease down this tube into the stern gland just there, which basically keeps the propeller shaft nice and watertight and hopefully keeps it relatively dry below the engine in the bay there, which it is, to be fair. I mean, it's not looking particularly pleasant, but it's not filled with water. And of course, hopefully keeping as much water as possible on the outside of the boat. To cut a long story short, this was incredibly tightly packed in. It was covered in grease, but with the use of a lot of kitchen roll and a rubber glove, we should now have a nice, easy untwisting. Oh my giddy aunt. Now believe me, there's a lot of time passed between this clip and the previous clip. Okay then, my friends, so here you can see the whole system all as a nice, almost like a cross section, I suppose, here. So we've unscrewed the lid here. You can see that the plunger here is literally just a simple plunger in a brass tube. And obviously, because this is all a twisty mechanism, if I start to spin this round, you can see how much force and how much pressure you can get in this, because as you're twisting, you're moving such a tiny amount at a time. Right then, my friends, embarrassingly, I'd uploaded this video and it hadn't actually got a voiceover on this section. So as you can see, our tub of waterproof grease has got this plastic disc with a hole in the centre, and after some coercion, persuasion and brute force, you'll see that once everything's all good, and I've figured it all out, I had trouble doing this last year, as soon as it's all in order, you just force down on the brass tube and all of the grease is forced up through the centre of that plastic disc, filling it up pretty much flawlessly there. Absolutely perfect. As I say, it did take some previous attempts not filmed here. And there we go, my friends. It's screwed down into the base nice and tightly. Everything's all watertight by the looks of it at the minute. And we've obviously got the handle nice and high to steadily twist around a lot more grease down to the steering gland. Lovely, right, I'll see you next year. Right then, my friends, the next job is a nice simple one, and that is adding on 4 nice new rope fenders, sort of at the corner points of the boat. Now previously I've always used rubber fenders because I find that they're a lot slicker, they're a lot less prone to getting moss and all sorts of grass and growth growing up, because they haven't got all of these nooks and crannies that the rope fenders have. However, there is one downside, and that's why I've moved back to rope fenders, which is these are a lot softer than the rubber ones, which is particularly an issue sometimes on the windier nights on board, or if there's just a little bit of movement on the boat and you're lying in bed and you can just hear the boat every time it sort of brushes up against the bank. Obviously a solid rubber tube basically is constantly going do against the side of the boat. And so anyway, with the rope ones, they're obviously a lot softer and nicer and more pleasant, and they look far more traditional too. Anyway, let's get these stuck on. So I thought, rather than the normal carabiner, however you'd like to pronounce that word, clips for the fenders, I'd use these little horseshoe shaped ones. And basically there's 2 reasons. Firstly, I wanted them to be nice and high up, as it might not be to everybody's tastes how high I have these fenders, but it's just the way I like it, so that the fender is literally hanging over the widest part of the boat. It seems to make sense to me, but I understand why people like them lower in the water and stuff, but that's a debate for another time. Secondly, just note how much the boat is shifting around here, as there's actually a boat passing right now at this moment, or when I was filming, not while I'm doing the voiceover. And secondly, do not look too closely at the paintwork, especially not where it's meant to be black, below that bottom blue line there. I'm hoping it's a matter of weeks. It's almost a matter of imminence, if all goes to plan, until the boat's out of the water, to have the whole blacked and have a nose around what's going on below the waterline. But yeah, as I say, hopefully these nice old style rope fenders will be a nice little finishing touch. If we just have a look down the side here, you can see one of my rubber fenders. They're all now removed, but as I say, they might be a little bit high for some people's taste, but that's just how I like them, so that's where they're going to be. Anyway, yeah. Right then, friends, I'm going to cut this video short here, as there's all sorts of other odd jobs going on, with getting AstroTurf up in the bow, cutting the blinds in half and all sorts of stuff like that, but we'll come to that in the future video, I think, as there's anyway, I won't bore you anymore. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed this, maybe found it slightly more informative than some of my other videos, and well, I suppose, as always, if you want to support this channel and help me out, please do consider checking out my short books available for the Kindle as a paperback. You'll find links to those on the description. Please do subscribe, hit the notification bell, and feel free to follow me, add me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and goodness knows what else. Loads of links in the description. I'll leave them with you, and I hope to see you around. Until the next time, my friends, keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, have a fantastic day, and of course, farewell.